Okay, so a bit of further research into Prusa slicer versus Cura. So on some of these parts, you just cannot print them in a Prusa slicer on the 3D labs because the objects will just fall back to the build plate because of that annoying feature called snap to. And the other thing was why is Cura so much heavier on G code? I think it was 1.37 meg for G coding Cura and 837 kilobytes for Prusa on a particular part, like this, for example. And it seems, from what I can tell, down to the way that it does its layering, especially where it sees more complex components. And a good example of that is something like this. So if I were to, well, first of all, with just usual settings, and this has got two top and two bottom layers, right? Because I want to have a bit of structure down here where my mouse is, a bit down, so I want some structure. Just close that out. I want a bit of reinforcement here. This is seen as a top surface, this is seen as a top, obviously, and then down here is a bottom. So I want a bit of reinforcement around here. So let's slice this, and then let's just have a quick preview to see how that looks. And we'll just scroll down here. Right, now what Cura does, from what I can tell over and above the Prusa slicer, is it seems to have quite a good algorithm for stitching these complex areas together so that they're really strong. Whereas the Prusa slicer doesn't spend a lot of time in these complex areas. And that leads to looseness of the mesh and filament, basically a bit of a crow's nest, especially in this vertical piece or in the horizontal piece. So, and that's, I think, what differentiates Cura from Prusa is, yes, it takes a bit longer. Yes, the code is obviously larger, but in terms of quality, yeah, Cura has the quality. Prusa has the simplicity and the speed. So it's all really how you're using the slicers and what the slicers do. What Cura has over and above um, that Prusa has some good features, and it's very good and efficient on code. But the only downside is it's not as clever when you look at complexity of certain components. If it's simple components, it's not so bad. But where you've got complexity, then it isn't so good. And the other thing, as I've mentioned already, in fact we just bring up Prusa, is it has this annoying feature, which is, as far as I can see, it's an oversight, more of a bug in some ways, is the snap to feature. There's just no way to turn it off. So let's just come back to, because this particular part, uh, let's go and have a look at it. It's a shame because the Prusa slicer is quite good. So what are we printing here? It's AE2, isn't it? So it's port wing section 2. Port wing section 2. Yeah. So let it doesn't really matter what direction you flip this, you will because it's got these parts in that you separate into objects. It's unable to. So let's drop that to the horizontal. It's about there, I reckon, something like that. And let's just pinch and zoom. Make sure it's level. I think it looks like it's level. Alright, let's just separate out into objects. And as soon as you do that, you can't really see it. But as soon as you try and slice it, there you go, you get this error. And then you look inside the object, you can see that it has dropped one of the pieces to the bottom. Yeah, in fact, you can see it there. There it is. Look, this piece here should be at the top, and it's dropped it to the bottom because it has this horrible feature called Snap to, and it shouldn't be doing that really. Um, it should. I don't know. I suppose it makes sense that it does because it just sees them all as loose objects, so it assumes you snap them, but it doesn't look at the model to see where they are, which is kind of weak coding from what I can tell. It should really look at the model and say, well, this is meant to be, up here, or maybe you should group these bits together, but it doesn't have that facility. Once you put them into objects, it assumes all of them should snap to the base. Well, that's just poor coding from what I can tell. And there's nothing you can do to get this part um, to print. It just will not print, no matter what orientation you have with it. So sadly, I'm giving up with Prusa for the time being and going back to Cura. So after doing further tests between Cura and Prusa, I conclude Cura is the better slicer. Yes, it produces more code, but the reasons for that is because it deals with complexity of parts such that it creates very accurate prints. Now that's it for now, guys. Catch you later.